Education to order. Let me start that again. So it's 7 p.m. I'd like to call to order the special meeting of the Groton Board of Education on Friday, February 23rd. And this is a budget work session. I want to start out this evening by saying that last night there was a vote to remove the adult education component of the budget. I did get additional information about that today. Again, these are classes that are held at the high school for adult education credit diploma, English for speakers of other languages, general education development, and let's see, ESOL. So
and citizenship.
And citizenship. This by removing it from our budget, again, it would be a burden, I believe, to that segment of the population that needs these services to have to go to New London. And furthermore, I discovered that John Burt shared with me that the town does receive 120, or did receive last year, $124,000 toward that line item. So while it doesn't come directly to us, we are one town, and we are the teaching and learning component of the towns. I think it's only appropriate we offer these services to the population that needs them. And when I went to the Connecticut state site today, it was actually showing, I don't know if it's for this coming year, $207,000 coming back. So we're going to list that in our budget book on our revenue side, funds that come to the town to pay for expenses incurred by the Board of Ed. So I would respectfully like to request that we reconsider that motion last night. I really believe that we'd be doing a disservice to our community to cancel that service here in town. I should have advocated more strongly for it last night. I actually didn't think it was going to be terribly controversial, but I was going to ask, since Ian, I believe, made the motion last night, if he wanted to make an additional motion this evening.
Thank you, Jay. Just to be sure, I'm not sure how we do this in the bylaws, but it's my understanding that this may be a town council thing, but I also believe that maybe Robert's Rules requires someone from the prevailing side to make the motion to reconsider. Is that accurate?
So I don't know if Joan could speak to this. So it was a tie. It was my recollection. And maybe Joan would like to chime in on whether someone who voted against it last night would need to make the motion.
I only got 3 from last night who voted against it. So if it was a tie, I need to know who that person was. But I believe it would be the no votes that could.
So wait, so what was the final tally on the vote? I thought it was a 4-4
What
tie.
I got in, okay, was yes, Jay, Andrea, Adrian, you, and Jennifer. If that's wrong, then someone needs to correct me. I only got Dev, Matt, and Need. I can't call his first name right now. Rob, excuse me.
You're fine.
You guys go so fast in what you're doing that it's a little bit hard for me to keep track. So
did that actually pass then?
that's the way I got it in. Okay. But if Jay is saying it was a tie, I need for minutes to know who the fourth person under no is.
Actually, I believe, Matthew, did you abstain?
I abstained, but I was recorded as a no.
Okay, then I will correct that, Matt. But I still need that one other vote.
Mrs. Johnson, I think this is Andrea, and I'm still not on a screen that I can see, or am I? I'm not sure.
I don't have my video on for obvious reasons.
Okay, and I also have some other information for you. But at any rate, I thought I voted no, but I could be wrong.
Okay,
I believe you did.
Thought I did. Say that
then
again?
that'll take care of it.
Oh, okay.
So at this point, if,
So oh,
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I was just gonna ask if Matthew was an abstention or a no last night, because that would matter, correct? Like if we only had 3 no's and
No,
4 yes.
You need a majority, yes.
yeah. You need the majority, yes, as Matt just said.
Would
It
it
was
be
a 4-3-1.
helpful? Would it be helpful? I'm sorry.
Hey Jay,
Would
I'm
still
here.
been
Can you hear
4-4.
me? Can you hear me, Jay?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, I'm
think-
here. I didn't get the link, so Susan sent me the link.
Okay,
So it says Susan, but it's me.
okay, Clint can correct that. Thank you.
Would it facilitate things if one of the no's or abstains were to ask for a reconsideration of the vote?
Yes,
Yes.
Then,
Yeah.
with your permission, I would like to ask for a reconsideration of the vote.
Joan, so he was an abstention. He was an abstention.
yes, I know.
So can he call for the vote?
Yes,
Okay. All right. So I would second your motion, Matthew. Is there any discussion?
So I'm still trying to figure this
All
out.
right, so can we just,
Go ahead, Ian.
I just wanted to be clear where we are and what we're doing, just to be sure, so that, everyone can follow along. The last night, the motion last night was to rescind the proposed cut of $252,335 for the adult education program. The cut was proposed by the superintendent, and I forget who actually made the motion, who seconded. I think it was me who made the motion to rescind that proposed cut and restore that money to the budget. And so a yes vote would have been in favor of restoring the adult education program for that sum of money, and a no vote would have been against that, which would have kept the cut in place. And so if I understand correctly, the final tally on the vote from last night was a 4-3-1. 4 in favor, 3 against, and 1 abstained. Is that
Yes.
correct?
yes, I believe
Okay.
so.
And
And
so
then
now, with Mr. Schulman's motion, he's asking to reconsider the
The original motion.
original motion. And I don't know, I tried to second it, but I think my mic might have been off. But either way, we got a second for that, right? With Mr.
Yes,
Whitlow?
with Jay.
Okay,
Jay
that's
seconded.
fine. So now we're in the discussion mode for the vote to
Reconsider.
reconsider? Or are we
Reconsider.
actually? Okay. So I'm in favor of reconsidering. We're in the discussion mode, right?
Yes.
On the motion to reconsider, and we have to vote on the motion to reconsider, and then we vote on the matter itself. Is that correct?
Hey Jay, did they find money to pay for adult education? Did they
Yes,
find money in the grant?
Yes, Bev. So John Burt said in the current year, the town received 124,000, and the state website is showing now, I don't know if it's for this year or next year, 207,000. So that would be listed as a revenue received by the town to support education.
And that's how we're gonna pay for the adult education, as I understand it.
Yeah, I mean, that does not cover the entire amount. But as I was discussing at the beginning, I really think that it does a disservice to a segment of our population to increase that burden of having to travel to another town to get those services when they can be offered at Fitch. The payment does go to the New London Adult Education, who actually performs the services at Fitch.
Okay, but you all do realize that we're gonna have to make some cuts here. We're just adding money to the budget. We're not making any cuts.
Yes, I just
That's
think
what you want to do. That's fine. You all can do that, but you're not really, you're not even making any cuts. Susan made all the cuts. We didn't do anything. We just added to the budget.
Jen, I believe, was first, and then Ian.
I think this is a social, we shouldn't look at it from the eyes of budget. There's a lot, that we can look at, but morally and socially, we owe it to people who are trying to improve their lives, who may not have necessarily made the best decision, or maybe never had the opportunity due to unforeseen circumstances in their lives. If they want to pursue an education, whether it's a GED, English as a second language, or a full diploma, I feel like we, as the Board of Ed, regardless of age, we need to offer these services to individuals, whether it's one person in that classroom or 100. And if I think it was Robert who mentioned it yesterday, that it was roughly 4,000 or whatever the number may be, there we should not determine costs at this stage, because this is going to allow them sometimes when they're looking for jobs. This could be a barrier to entry into the workforce. And we need to do everything we can to support education, whether that child is 4.5 starting kindergarten or whatever age they may be participating in this class. And that's all I have to say for the people who voted to eliminate the adult ed budget. Please look at it from that perspective. Thank you.
So next I'll recognize Ian and then Rob.
All right, thank you. Yeah, so I just to finish the question I was asking before, right now the motion that's on the floor is to reconsider. So we need to vote on this one first, and pending approval to reconsider, then we vote on the actual number to restore that amount. Is that correct procedurally? I believe it's a two-step process, is what I'm saying.
That
And I
that
just
is
want
my
to
that is my understanding, unless Joan believes otherwise.
No, I agree.
Okay, great. I'm not going to belabor the point. I agree with the way Jen's characterization of the situation, I think is commendable. And, again, yeah, we want to, I see adult education as an extension of public education. It's just sometimes, for whatever life circumstances, people need to come in later to take that up. So I don't believe in putting any barriers. And on top of that, I think it got lost in translation last night that the 252,335 number, we got a good bit of that coming back to us in a reimbursement. So it's not actually that much out of pocket for the district to provide this service. So I'm in favor of the motion to reconsider, and I'm also in favor of restoring that to the budget. And to address Bev's concern about, making cuts, I do want to talk about that very soon afterwards. I have some ideas, and I want to kind of discuss how we could approach lowering our overall percentage of increase by looking at other departments in the budget. Thank you.
Rob?
So I'm trying to get my understanding straight. Currently, we have 252,000 some odd dollars being spent on this adult education. This year we got 120 or so, you said back, and next year it's going to be 200. Is that specifically slated for the adult education program? And is that, if we don't provide that in Groton, does that completely go away?
So my understanding is that from the town manager is that they received 124,000. If you go to the state website, it shows a pending grant. It's basically a grant for any town that provides adult education and is therefore eligible to receive that grant.
So by having the 58 students we have doing classes at Fitch instead of New London, we're receiving that grant. If we were to have them go to New London instead, that grant would be lost, correct?
That's my understanding. If we're not putting out the funding, then we would not be eligible to apply for a grant for partial reimbursement.
Okay, because my original
That's
understanding
my
of how this was that we were spending $252,000 for 58 students, and I'm not gonna kind of beat around the bush here, for convenience that they didn't want to go to London. Whether they can or not, what barriers exist, that was my understanding. With this new understanding that there is a grant, there is some form of reimbursement, my mind has been changed. But I also agree with Beverly. This is budget. This is about numbers. Unfortunately, things have to be cut. And to Jen's point, I'm sorry if things have to be cut, but again, this is the budget meeting. So when I'm thinking about the budget, that's because we're in a budget workshop. Thank you.
Thank you. So are there any other, is there any other discussion on the motion on the floor to reconsider?
Jay, I will vote to reconsider, and
Okay,
I will vote to support the adult ed for the
yes,
same reason that Rob is saying. If
Yeah.
there wasn't a grant, I wouldn't vote for it. But being that there's a grant to fund that adult ed, I will vote for it.
thank
And I
you.
hope there is a grant. I hope next year we don't find that, oh, there's no grant, and we have to fund the whole program. So I hope what we're doing is correct.
I will get the information from the state website and send it to the board. The, at this point then, all in favor of the motion on the floor to reconsider, please indicate by raising your hand and saying aye.
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 All right, so that's unanimous. Now I'll entertain a motion to add $252,335 back to the budget for adult education.
So moved, Thomas.
And do I hear a second?
Second.
Adrian? All right, is there any discussion on this motion to restore the funds to the budget? Hearing none, all in favor, please raise your hand and indicate by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? Abstentions? So that was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in favor. What was yours, Beverly?
Aye.
Okay, so you were, so that's 7. And Andre, I didn't see your hand.
Oh,
Okay, so that was unanimous.
Beverly and Rob convinced me.
Okay.
I'm still thinking about it.
Yeah.
But I'm done.
All right. Very good. So, moving along, does anyone have any new information they want to add with regard to the budget? Ian?
Thank you. So, before I make any motions, I just want to kind of talk about process and powers, I guess, and the parameters of what we can influence as a board. I'm curious to know, can we, when we move a number, and again, coming from like the RTM, you know, it was a different setup in different organizations, so we were able to kind of really target cuts towards certain departments. And the way this is rolled out, it's really not that clear how we would do that. The way things are organized inside the budget. So I'm just curious to know if we can move a number, you know, for a reduction and have it directed towards a certain department or object code, without being specific to the line items within that object code.
So let me just lay out that next Monday, we're going to be asked to vote on a percentage increase and the corresponding dollar amount. That's how the agenda reads on Monday. So, and that's basically how the other bodies vote. So my suggestion would be that, and this is purely my suggestion, is that we spend this weekend thinking what would be the number that we could advocate for that would provide the services we need for the students. And then on Monday, people could bring up different numbers to vote on. But if everybody comes up, you know, with a number. In terms of voting line by line, I just think it's a little bit awkward at this stage to go line by line, but that's just my opinion. That's up to the board. Ian?
Yeah, thank you. Maybe I didn't explain what I'm trying to ask. I guess I could be okay with a certain percentage increase overall. You know, however, I am very concerned about where these cuts are located right now. And I believe there's savings to be had in other parts of the budget. And we are the one body in town that has the authority to direct where the cuts can occur within the Board of Ed budget. That is our job. Now, the superintendent is the CEO of the organization, and there is some autonomy that is typically granted there. However, you know, we are where we are right now. And I feel like, you know, what we've been offered as an option is not what I'm in favor of seeing where the cuts are made. And I'm concerned that if we vote for that number on Monday, the overall number, without any sort of targeted direction within the subcategories, and I'm talking broad subcategories, like broad object codes, not, you know, again, like the way that it's organized is difficult. And what I'm trying to relay is that, you know, with the town side of the budget, not the Board of Ed budget, but with the town side of the budget, you are going like, you know, Parks and Rec department, you're going, you know, through, you know, the Registrar of Voters department, you're going through this, you know, all the other departments of the town. That's similar to like how we have different departments within the Board of Ed. So as we go through the town budget, we vote on certain sections and we adjust the numbers per that section. And then that number carries through. Now, it's up to the town manager and the department heads in those sections. Once they get their adjusted number, they have to make the hard choices within their line items inside that department. So I am concerned with the fact that, predominantly the cuts that we've been offered to get to the 9% figure are the hourly wage employees, the teachers, tutors, programming that I mean, we did restore the summer school and the adult ed, thankfully. But this is all stuff that is more directly impacting student interaction and student support. I'm not comfortable with that. I would like to direct the superintendent to apply some reductions to the administrative costs. And I would like to move a certain number that's directly targeted towards administrative cost reduction. Now, how they do that inside that department, inside that category, is up to them. I don't want to micromanage the line item. I don't want to target certain positions. I don't want to have to count paper clips. I'm just saying, I think we can find reductions in the administrative costs. And I want to make sure that carries through. Now that's up to the board to vote. I have no power as an individual board member. That's just me advocating for what I believe is a path forward to, again, minimize impact on the students, to best support the ground level staff that we have, and that will remain. But as it is now, we are cutting with a broad sword into the ground level staff. And I'm not seeing commensurate cuts or adjustments on the administrative side of things. I see some movement, but it's very small proportionally speaking. So, just procedurally, why? I know it's not typically been done this way, but it is theoretically possible. We do have that authority as a board to lean in that far if we felt it was necessary. So I don't want to lean in all the way to the point where as a board, we're dictating, what type of paper is going in the copier. But, I do want to say that, if we're going to make reductions, there should be a shared sacrifice between, student support, staff support, and administrative costs, and to that end, I mean, if we're reducing all these employees on the ground level, there should be a commensurate reduction of management staff, because we're not going to need as much management to oversee the employees, right? So there's the logic, there should be like a balance there, a balanced approach. And, I'll let other people respond to that and see where we go.
Adrian? And then-
Yes, Ian said a lot of actually what I ended up at what I was going to say. So my feeling is that nearly all of the staff cuts we made were the staff cuts that I personally was less comfortable with, because they are the direct impact with students, the people that are working with children every hour of the day when they're there. And I felt like it was lopsided. And I mean, these are recommendations by the superintendent, but these are our cuts. We are making a decision as a Board of Education on what we value as far as in the staffing. And I want to be clear, I value all of the staff, and I wish that we could just open up on September for whatever, August 28th or September 1st, in the same school that we're closing in the fall or in the spring. But I feel that as a board, we should show where our values are. And I personally don't feel like it was even, the impacts are evenly felt through the district. I'm just slightly uncomfortable with the lopsidedness of where these cuts are. And that's it.
Andrea?
It has to, there we go. I agree with Ian. I'm sorry, I do agree with Ian, but I agree with Adrian, particularly on a moral level. But I said all of that the first time, so you know where I stand on that. I was outspoken, shall we say. However, I'm still where I was 20 years ago when we took that 1 year freeze on our salary raises. And that's because I believe with my heart that when you sign a contract, that's you're giving your word, and then to go back on it for whatever reason. My suggestion 20 years ago was that we draw a new contract. When we draw the new contract, when we do, that we consider that freeze at that time. That I could live with. But to go back on your word, I can't live with that.
Jen?
We wouldn't be having discussions about teacher reductions, administrative reductions, any reductions, if she were to just give up the increases that are related to the ESSER funding. That ESSER grant, although it is valuable and there are clients, children being served, everyone who signed that contract knew that their position was related to a grant. So we are not breaking any promise there. By Superintendent Austin adding those ESSER grant employees into the budget, she is risking our current teachers and our current administrative staff, because now we've just absorbed roughly $3 million into the budget. And what I've been trying to convey in our past meetings is that all of the ESSER grants related positions should go. And if there's 10 handful ones that she wants to move forward, line item it and say all of the ESSER positions will be eliminated from the budget, but Board of Ed, RTM, Town Council, please consider these 10 positions, which although started from the ESSER grant, she could say, I find these valuable enough, and these are the 10 or whatever number positions that I want to move forward. So that's my recommendation. This way, we're fulfilling our obligation to the town. I guess whenever this was implemented and voted at, we were gonna use funding that was finite to support wages. It should have gone to non-wage related expenditures, but that's water under the bridge. So now we need to fix it. And that's all I have to say.
Andrea?
No, I've been trying to put my hand down, and
Okay.
whatever I'm pushing isn't working. So
Okay.
maybe Clint knows how to do it.
All right. So next I'll recognize Bev and then Matthew.
Thank you, Jay. Let me put my video on. Okay, my video's not working. Sorry about that. Even though I do agree with Adrian about about trying not to cut positions or anything that has to do directly with students. I'm gonna lean more towards what Jen is saying, because we did know ever since I was on the board, I always asked about those ARP ESSER funds and the people that were employed by those funds. So we knew eventually those funds were gonna leave and that we had to do something with the employees. So that's why I'm agreeing with Jen. I mean, we have to make some cuts, and that's the only way I see it. I don't want to play tit for tat because we're cutting tutors that we need to cut administrators. I don't think that's right. Susan came in with a budget where she thinks we should make cuts. She's the CEO. She knows better than we know how to run the school district. And so I'm going to go with her cuts, but I do agree with Jen. I'm not agreeing with Ian that we should cut central office people and administrators. I do not agree with that. Thank you.
Matthew? You just need to unmute.
My apologies.
No problem.
I first want to clarify what one of my understandings was. My understanding is that at the time Susan brought in her proposed budget, bringing over the original number that she brought over of ARP ESSER, there was a commitment from the state that we would be getting either a rebate or that the state was covering all the costs of a certain line item. I'm sorry, I'm exhausted. In the amount of roughly $400,000 that would have offset some of these costs. And that now the governor has said to change the 100% coverage to roughly 50%. I don't recall the exact number. So I would say that I understand if I'm right, and Jay, I guess let me stop there. Jay, is grosso modo, am I reflecting on your understanding of the changes in the budget since that first came in?
Yes, so last year, the legislature said that they would pay 100% of our inter-district magnet tuition. When the governor made his proposal a month ago, he proposed cutting that tuition reimbursement. So we have now reduced it in our budget to reflect the possibility that it will be cut because we don't want to budget for money that is in jeopardy.
So may I go on from that?
Yep.
That is what I understood. And I believe the figure was roughly 400,000.
Yeah, I believe it's the difference, maybe 420.
So initially, when Susan made her proposal, the cost of moving the ARP ESSER people to our budget was going to be offset to a tune of approximately 400,000. Now we've taken that 4,000 in projected revenue out of our budget, but we've left in a large share of her initial proposal. I think that's where the rubber's hitting the road. So let me throw out an idea, and if you guys think it's a good idea, maybe we can make a motion that reflects that we remove the ARP ESSER funds now with the hope, the strong hope that between all the school districts lobbying and our legislators lobbying, the legislature will override the governor's veto and that money will be restored. This could happen in April. It might not happen until May or whenever their deadline is. If that money is restored, at that point, we will have $400,000 where we can bring over a good number, maybe not all, without affecting the local taxpayers. If I'm missing something, Jay or anybody else, please correct me. I don't pretend to be an expert in budgets. That's my idea.
Ian? And then Adrian.
Adrian can go. I'll go after him.
You do need to unmute yourself, Adrian.
Sorry. I was just going to ask because Jen had said that it was about $3 million in salaries that we're bringing from ARP ESSER into our budget. And I unfortunately cannot find the sheet. I have a sheet that says we were bringing 43 jobs from ARP ESSER in and then letting go of 65 jobs, 65.5. And I think it's actually gone down a little bit, the number that we're but I believe that when that sheet was printed, there's a second one that we were given that had the actual number on it. But I thought that number was about 1.6 million, not 3 million. So
I can
we're
answer
talking
that.
order of magnitude of 2, and that doesn't even include all the other cuts.
As far as we got this one sheet that has all the ARP ESSER positions on it.
Mhm.
And at the bottom of it, it says it's basically 2.2 million is the sum total of all these positions. Some salaries are up towards 100,000 each, and then it goes all the way down to, $19,000-$20,000. But there's security guards, community coordinators, the communication specialist, a guidance person, a whole bunch of tutors. Those are all listed on this one document. I think that's the page that you were referring to, Adrian, that you were looking for.
I am referring
No,
to this sheet, which I think I gotta
sorry.
turn.
See, oh God, my camera's
Your
not that
background's not
good.
letting it come through either.
I think you got your
Yeah.
blur effect on, Jen.
Sorry. Oh, yes, I do
Um,
have the blur. So Adrian, where I keep coming back to the 3 million where you're not seeing it, the sheet that I'm attempting to hold up, it has all of the positions, um, all of the 43 positions identified, and it does come up to 2.2 million. But if you look closely, it's just the salary number. When you bring the salary over, there is a appropriate and corresponding benefits. So I'm putting the benefits factor on top of that 2.2 because the total increase to the district is not just 2.2, it's 2.2 plus a factor. Normally it's anywhere between 20 to 30% depending on, so I'm just roughly throwing that in to call it 3 million so that we have a fair, I'm trying to bring a fair assessment of what's actually coming in.
All right.
So that, and then I'll try to,
I know that, well, a lot of jobs don't have medical, essentially, the way the contracts have been written. So those have very low loads in addition. I mean, the medical, I think, on like teaching personnel is $25,000 or $30,000 per position. So I guess I would rather see an accurate, like a number. I mean, it'd be a great number to get from Dave to see how much is the real cost once we put in benefits. And I believe that wasn't a lot of that taken back already.
um,
I cannot find the sheets from yesterday on me right now, so I apologize for not being prepared. But
I'm going to step away. I'm going to take a picture of it. And if, oh, if you send me your, oh, I don't think I have your telephone number. I would text it to you. If that's, Ian, do you have it? Like, do you have Adrian's number? Because it looks like you had the
yeah,
same.
I could send that over.
Oh, thank you. Just so that he has it. And that's okay. So I can back off from the 3 million, removing the factor, and just refer to the sheet as 2.2. That's fine.
Yeah, that's a good point, Adrian, because we don't know if the tutors actually get insurance, health insurance, or if they get any benefits. But so yeah, Jen, just stick with the 2.2 million.
All right. So we had gone to Adrian and then Jen, but I think Ian, you had your hand up. No? Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, again, it's a little bit of a mix right now because what the superintendent gave us was, a series of adjustments after we got the initial information. So, I mean, again, my central question is, I could understand the logic behind the idea of just dropping all the ARP-ESSER positions, because I see how that's a logical choice. I'm not saying I agree with it, but I can understand the logic behind it. I'm not quite there yet, but um, you know, it's it's a little hard to parse out, right? Because now, like, we've had some other adjustments and some other future adjustments on top of that. So, if we're going to get to a number, like right now, like the number that we came to last night was around 9.01%. With the adding back in of the adult education, that's probably going to bump it up to 9.1, 9.15 maybe. Um, so, but that doesn't. If we just do all the ARP-ESSER stuff, it's going to be hard to extract from the other things that got intertwined with the superintendents, because she started moving money around from grants to cover certain positions and things like that. I think, there is a clean break aspect to the ARP-ESSER just expiring and all those positions expiring with the grant. And then we rebuild from there, from the ground level things. But that's still, at the end of the day, 2.2 million off the top of the budget. Now, does that still, so if we just kind of wipe out everything that was already done and we start with that approach of just letting ARP-ESSER drop, what does that do to the superintendent's proposed cuts? Because some of the ARP-ESSER stuff is intermixed in here, where we carry it forward, some we shift around in grants. If we're going to go to the ARP-ESSER drop method, then that's sort of like a whole reboot of the approach. And to that end, I still think that only takes 2.2 off of what would be probably more the 13.54 number that we were talking about on the 12th. So that would not do much to, that would get us down probably, maybe in the 10% range, maybe 11% range. So we would still need to make further cuts. And again, so like, I still think we have to look critically at administrative costs, even if we do the ARP-ESSER blanket drop, which I could be in favor of if we approach it in the right balanced direction. But we still would have to look at administrative cuts in some form or fashion. We still would have to look at the consulting fees. We don't have clean information on that. Who are the consultants? What do they do? How much are they getting paid? And how are they getting paid? From what monies? Grants, budget. Again, this information has been requested and not delivered. So, at this point, like, I don't see a path forward for me to be in favor of any budget that we put forward on Monday night, because we don't have clean information and we don't have a balanced approach. So I'm just gonna leave that there and listen to the reactions on that.
I'll recognize Beverly and then Matthew.
Okay, so we have the superintendent's budget. We have the cuts that she made. So then we had a new budget. And she had when she made her cuts, it was like 8.9% or 8.7%. I don't remember exactly. And now we added in a couple of things. So that brought us up over 9%. So now all we have to do is figure out, if we take out those ARP-ESSER funds, where does that leave us? I don't know why it's getting so complicated. I know I'm not a financial person, so you got to help me with this. If we had a new budget
Just
last
to
night,
clarify, well,
go ahead, Ian.
right.
Go ahead.
Well, what I was trying to explain is that the new budget that the superintendent gave us,
Yeah.
with the green box on it that we discussed last night and we made some adjustments to. Inside that budget, if you look at the line items, there's a lot of ARP ESSER retention in there. So we'd have to extract that out if we're going to do
Right.
ARP ESSER blanket. If we're going to
Right.
blanket ARP ESSER drop the ARP ESSER
Mm-hmm.
altogether, 100%. We have to extract that back out. So like that gets, that makes all these numbers kind of like,
Okay. So when we
suspect.
extract that
Yeah.
out, where does that leave us? That's what I want to know. I'm not doing the math, but if we extract all that ARP ESSER stuff out of the budget, where does that leave us?
Well, that's where it gets complicated because, the financial director and the superintendent had kind of cobbled together, there's a whole lot of patch and paint going on in here.
Yeah. Well, that's
between
what we'll have
grants
to.
and budget.
That's what we'll have to ask Dave to do. Take out all
Right.
the ARP ESSER stuff and let us know where does that leave us. And I'm sure he can do that. If we get to him first thing Monday morning, I'm sure he could figure that out.
Matthew? Matthew, you need to unmute.
I thought I understood from yesterday that we were going to vote on a figure on Monday, number one. Number two, we were going to write a letter to the town council asking to respectfully put us at the very end of the review, specifically for the purpose of going and doing a deep dive to find more cuts. And I thought I heard consensus about that. I thought you were part of that consensus, that was the path that we would do, that we needed to get something in now, but that not voting for a budget now would put us back at last year's budget, which would be a catastrophe. So what am I misunderstanding? Thank you.
So, yes, what I'm suggesting is that we come up with a number that preserves the services to the students, and then we go through and continue to get the information that each of us, or as a board, we decide is important to determine where else we could find efficiencies. And in the meantime, we may hear about the governor's proposal. And the town manager has graciously moved us. I don't have the date in front of me. I believe he's tentatively moving us to April 15th instead of being 1st. So that'll give us another couple of weeks. And the proposal was that we would meet as a committee of the whole, determine what more information and data we need, and then decide if there are additional efficiencies. Ian?
Thank you. What would the superintendent be legally bound to adhere to that deal? I guess like I'm a little concerned that if we vote that 9% number or whatever, that whatever it ends up becoming on Monday night, yet we're on the agreement that we're going to continue to work on that. Do we have the superintendent's, what guarantees that?
We have final
What
say.
sort of executive authority do we have over the situation?
So the Board of Ed, as we know, sets policy, sets the budget, hires the superintendent. So we have broad authority to say that we can go to the town council and disclose whether it's the final decision on the inter-district magnet tuition or any other factor that changes between now and then, or decisions that we make as a board to offer to the council that we're reducing our request. And that would be the sole authority, under the sole authority of the board, if we voted that way.
So, but do we have the power to direct the superintendent to apply the adjustments that we deliberate after the fact, after the vote on Monday? Does that still have binding power? You know, what power do we have to direct within departments of the budget, right? So say we do want to, you know, make administrative cuts. Can we direct to say that any, you know, you need to cut $450,000 out of administrative costs? How you find that 450 is up to you, but that's the number we want to see go down by.
We definitely can make a motion to that effect, and then she would have to find how to make those adjustments. Now, we have to also keep in mind that then there's going to be a process through the other bodies, and once that's done, there'll be potentially there could be a reconciliation process following that. And so in some respects, we'll be back to the drawing board, depending.
Well, I guess that's what I'm trying to determine, you know, is, you know, if we are able to kind of look at, you know, I mean, the 9% figure, you know, may or may not have, may or may not be acceptable to the town council and the RTM. We don't know.
That's
But we know that the lower we get that percentage, the better chances we have of it being approved.
Well, the
You know,
way I would
because the
say it,
RTM, sorry,
no, I'm sorry.
because the RTM and the town council cannot direct the money within the Board of Ed budget.
That's correct.
Only we can do that. If I understand you correctly, we do have the power to say, apply this cut to this department. And then, you know, it's up to the superintendent and their staff to figure that out.
Yes.
Really?
So,
That.
so that's good news to hear. So my thought would be to try to like come up with those numbers broadly now before the vote on Monday, so that, you know, or between now and Monday, have some ideas so that when Monday comes, we can, you know, discuss and vote on some numbers so that maybe we actually, you know, pass a lower percentage with the idea that, okay, this department is going to go down by this much and this department is going to go down by that much. And that way, like, we lower the risk of the town council and the RTM rejecting the overall increase. That would be, that's kind of where I'm trying to get to with this conversation.
Right. So I'm going to recognize.
And we look at departments.
Okay, I'm going to recognize Rob and then Bev.
I'm actually gonna ask Bev and Andrea both a question. They've been on the board longer than the rest of us probably combined. Our role, and the first thing we learned is stay in our lanes, right? Our role is to supply the superintendent with a budget that will allow her to do her job, to run the district. Our job isn't to go in and find nickels and pennies, making sure she puts pencils in the right places. It's to give her the budget to do her job. Are we doing that effectively right now? I absolutely do not believe so.
Beverly?
Thank you, Rob. I was gonna say the same thing. I feel very uncomfortable telling the superintendent, you gotta cut $450,000 out of the maintenance budget, 450,000 out of whatever. That's micromanaging the superintendent. We need to give her a budget. This is how much money you have, Susan. You figure it out, how to run the school district. Make sure our kids are learning. We want to see those test scores go up. We want to make sure our kids are reading. And if not, when we do your evaluation, we will reflect it on your evaluation. But I don't want to sit here and micromanage the superintendent, because now everybody has their place where they want to see a cut. This is your money, Susan. You got $80 million. You figure out where it's best for the school district to spend that money. And when the evaluation time comes around, if we don't think she did that the right way, then we put that in writing at the evaluation. But now you're trying to micromanage the superintendent. And I do not like where this board is heading. It's heading down the wrong path. Let's get to what the budget's going to be, what's the percentage of the increase, and move on. It's disgusting.
Jen, then Ian, then Matthew.
I think the only reduction I'm asking for is of the ESSER grant. If she considers that, none of this additional decreases would impact current staff and administration in the budget. I agree. I don't think we should micromanage her, but we need to come up with a number. I think 9% is too high. The town is not, that's not going to make RTM, and that's not going to make town council. We as a board need to come up with a number that shows that we did our due diligence and to the best of our ability, including, people deserve raises, right? We need to account for transportation. We need to fund the loss of the DOD supplement, so that we can present to the other two bodies that, yes, we are increasing by X%, but this is what it consists of. So I'm not comfortable with 9. I'm not even comfortable with 8. I'm probably not comfortable with 7. And so in my opinion, we need to come up with a percent. And then we tell her that from fiscal year 24 budget, you're only allowed to increase X amount.
Thank you, Jen. Ian, then Matthew, and then Andrea.
Thank you. So it's not the term micromanaging, I think, is a misnomer in this case. And if we're just going to like vote on a broad number of the percentage, then we might as well just be on the RTM or on the town council, because then we have no influence on where that goes within the budget. The Board of Ed does have that authority. Whether we exercise it or not is up to us and how we want to adjudicate ourselves as a board. Now we have given the superintendent and the guidance. We've voiced these concerns in many ways, many different opportunities over the past 2 months. And this is what we keep getting, what in my opinion is imbalanced budget. All the cuts, again, inordinately geared towards like lower end and the most vulnerable. And that's not something I'm comfortable doing. And I will not vote in favor of a budget that just gives a blank percentage toward, without any guidance. Like, we were elected to represent the interests of the community, and the community is interested in seeing guidance applied to how monies are allocated. And there's been plenty of opportunity, and we have voiced, every single person has voiced some aspect. And speaking for myself, I don't see my values or the values that, I received from the community, when I was out talking to people for, months on end, knocking doors all over town, and getting feedback. I don't see the values of the community reflected in this budget. And that's a great concern. There's unresponsiveness. And furthermore, there's insufficient information been applied. we still don't know what we don't know. I mean, I've been asking for consultant figures, haven't got them. So maybe there's savings there that why haven't we gotten the information we've asked for? So I am not going to vote for just a non-specific blank percentage, and I will push back on the idea of staying in our lanes. I don't agree with that characterization. Like, this is our lane. This is our purview. As a board, we are elected by the community to represent the community's interests. And I've heard from a lot of people in the community that they're not happy with the way things are allocated within the budget, and they feel that it's top heavy in administrative costs. That's not just me talking, that's other people talking through me. So we have a responsibility to the community, and we don't have the detailed information. And at this point, I don't see how I could vote in favor of this, because I don't see the values represented in these cuts. Like I said, I could see the logic in going to an ARP-ESSER blanket, because that is at least logically consistent within itself. It's in the end of a grant. Everyone knew what they're getting into when they signed on to that. However, that will not get us to where we need to be, given all the other increases in the healthcare costs, the bus contracts, inflation, and all that other stuff. So, like, if we do the blanket ARP-ESSER drop, which would include the communication specialist, just to be sure, that all would go. If we do that, we would have to reconfigure this whole sheet too. It basically would be like a reboot to step one, which, again, I'm not necessarily opposed to, but we would have to take a balanced approach, and we do have the authority, to direct within the departments. If we choose not to exercise it, that's on each board member to decide for themselves how they want to exercise that and own the vote. You own your own vote, and I am prepared to own mine when the day comes. So I'll just leave that there then.
All right, Matthew?
Thank you.
Well, I guess the first thing I want to say is, given the rigor with which Ian has approached this, I can't help but respect the legitimacy of his feelings and his perspective. I don't share all of it, but I want to acknowledge it and respect it publicly. I personally do not think we can go object code by object code and give direct instructions. What we can say, if we choose to, is that, this is my opinion, you don't have to buy it, other than life safety personnel, that student-facing instruction is our priority. We don't want to see cutting of existing student-facing instruction. Or we could say, we, except for ARP-ESSER, which we're removing 50%, 100%, whatever the board decides, protect student-facing instruction. We can ask her, we can't tell her, in my humble opinion, you must cut this field or not. We can say we think you should. And so far, in the last couple of days, she's come to Moses moment and realized that this board is different than past boards. This board is demanding more of her than past boards have. And if she makes a promise to us that she's going to do something, she's going to keep her promise, because I'm not speaking about Susan now. Any CEO who speaks to his or her board and says, I'm going to do something, and doesn't keep the promise, that's not good for that person. So I'm going to put my faith that we will ask her to make a commitment. Doesn't have to be in the paperwork. We can just ask her to make a commitment to follow our guidelines. And if she doesn't want to come back to us and speak to us before making the changes unilaterally. She may have a good idea we should listen to. Anyway, I thought we had a pathway, and that all the things that Ian has talked about, we were going to do in the next 5 or 6 weeks. as best we are physically and intellectually capable. So let's move forward and do that. Thank you.
Yeah, that was my understanding as well. Obviously, if we don't provide a budget on Monday, it goes back to zero. And I think we all agree that's devastating. So I say that each of you has to decide in your mind with all the information you have. And you know what? You're never going to have every scrap of information that and be able to process it all at once. I feel this budget timeline is too compressed to actually do the kind of analysis that some of us want to do, but we have no control over that. What we do have control over is the ability to now go back as a board to identify exactly what information we need and vote on that, and then bring that information into a COW so that we can make the intelligent decisions we want to make. And as Matthew said, I thought we had agreed to that. My point again is that on Monday, the way the motion is worded is that we will move a percentage and a number. And then the details have to be worked out. Ian.
Well, I should hope that we have the information we need on the other side of that vote, and I should hope that we that everyone's good for their word on that.
We all
The
hope that, I
process
believe.
after the vote.
We all hope
There
that.
was a moment in the meeting last night where the superintendent did put her hand on the paper and said, "No, these are going to stay the way they are." You know, when we were talking about the after process, and so that gave me some a moment of concern and pause. And you know, that is what makes me wonder, like, you know, do we need to be more explicit in our direction? And you know, to that end, you know, what we're talking about doing is exactly what I'm describing, only now it's happening after the fact, not prior to the fact of the vote. You know, this process over the past 2 months, you know, I mean, once we get through all this, you know, another month or two down the road, and things are finally in the hands of the RTM, and you know, we need to have a sort of a debrief on ways to do this better next time around, you know, so that we can be
Agreed.
more
Yeah,
organized.
I think we agreed on all of that. Yep.
Yeah, but I have grave concerns because, you know, what we're talking about doing after the vote on Monday is exactly what, you know, some other members have said that we can't do, that we can't direct. We can direct. That's what we were talking about doing. We just, you know, got in a position this time around where we didn't have the time or the information necessary to make those direct instructions. So, you know, we'll see how things shape up on Monday, but I would feel more comfortable if we had a little more direction attached to the overall number. You know, and that's where I'm at with it. And like, yeah, I agree that, you know, voting down the budget altogether is a disaster, right? Because you know, to go on a 0% increase in this year when there's been such stark increases in the insurance and the bus contract, obviously that just ostensibly becomes a cut for services.
Yes.
So that is not an option. So, you know, I would encourage those who are comfortable voting for, you know, the blank percent with no direction to do that. I can't say that I'm going to be one of them, but I should hope that, you know, a majority of the body would be at this point in time. And you know, those who have faith, then enjoy that faith. And I hope your faith proves true. I do not share that luxury at this point. my faith is shaken, and is not there. So, um, I just I'm looking forward to a more detailed process, and the sooner that we can get to that, the better. Thank you.
Jen? Oh, you just,
Oh, there you go. Am I unmuted?
yeah. Oh, no, you're muted again.
It's almost like, can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
So I too heard what Ian heard. It was ever so quiet and ever so stated, but it was stated that this is my budget, this is how it's going to stay, and that even if I were considering the proposal you had put forth, Jay, accepting that 8, and the number that she was touting is 8.76, because there was a comment made. There was a comment, and if you go back, and I don't know if it was heard, was that this is my budget. And that put me into shock, because if we do vote for the 8.75 and present that, until the RTM or the town council makes us reconsider the budget, I'm not really sure we will have the authority at that point, because we would have essentially given it up. So I don't know if anyone had a chance to look at the spreadsheet that I prepared. The 6%, and granted, they were saying that it's estimates, but I was taking some of those estimates from our budget binder. I'm probably a little off on that SR1, because I did add the benefits factor in there, but the 6% scenario that was presented does not include any of the cuts that we've been deliberating over. I'm telling you, we can afford that 6.5. It doesn't even dip into us not funding OPEB for a year. It's fair, it's honest. It accounted for the IT increase, it accounted for the DoD supplemental. We can't afford to lose that, even if the government doesn't give it to us. It takes into account the bus. So if I'm not just throwing a number out there, but I stated earlier, I'm not comfortable between 7 to 9% increase, but just reconsider that spreadsheet that I sent. And like, I know it's estimates. I'm not pushing for that 4.5. Our other two our other two volunteer organizations within this town, if they're not comfortable with the 6%, which is sort of in line with inflation too, then they can make that call.
Jen, can
So-
you send me that
Thank you.
spreadsheet, Jen?
Am I unmuted?
Now you're muted. You're okay now.
Okay, I can resend it.
Adrian?
Yeah, Jen, I'm looking at it right now, and I looked at this, and I don't understand how you change the increase of employee benefits from 3,340,411 to 1.8 million 74,405. So how do you knock that $1.5 million off the number of benefits?
Just need to unmute, Jen.
So what I did was I looked at the fiscal 24 year, and I said, what's the benefits over the salaries? So that benefit and salary ratio for 24 does not include the ARP ESSER staff, right? because they're funded through a grant, so they're not in this budget. So that is our administrative staff and teachers that we have on hand. So that ratio was 19% or 18.9. I made the assumption that we're going to give our, the people who are part of our budget a 3.5% increase. And granted, that might not be the right number. It may be closer to 3. I don't know the numbers that are in the teacher's contract, but I figured that's probably approximately where it's going to land. So with that increase based on the current salaries, if we gave the current salaries in 24 a 3.5% bump, I also said 19% increase. So if you're increasing salary, it would just be proportion. It's just an assumption that was made. I'm not, so, and then what I did was I think it was the second spreadsheet at the time. So anything else on that salary line that's not related to the increase of our current staff is ARP ESSER like investments. So, and that's how I came up, and I just had to split it between salaries and benefits. So like I said, I can probably tweak that a little bit better. But I think, that's how I came to that conclusion. And
I
then
guess.
oh, sorry. And then
No.
all of the other items, so like that 482 for the bus, that came from our, like what they were showing as an increase in transportation. The 500,000 was like something that they've always referred to that we receive from the government. So I really do find that like we need to try to find a way to supplement and bring that budget back in, because that's important, to the kids. Even if the government doesn't give it to us, let's put that in. I had took a swag at the IT investment of 125 just because sort of like, hey, what we are thinking of, it's sort of like around the 125. And to be honest with you, any IT increase, by the time you get consultants involved and you're adjusting line codes and stuff and customizations, it's going to drive that cost up. So I was like a 125 high end. What I suggest if we do move forward is don't do a lot of customizations, and that should be able to drive costs down. I didn't get to say it last night, but I feel, yes, I value Dave's opinion on that, but we should really, and I don't think we'll have enough time, we should look at other districts who have like ERP systems in place, and see like what applications they're using. And then, as you can see in the other 2 columns that are left, I didn't even take in I didn't even take into account any of her decreases. So our administrative staff and our teachers will not have to give up any of those items that she had asked them. I feel like we are creating stress for our district employees. Going back looking for pencils, I feel like we're making them look for pennies underneath cushions, in the couch here. So that's how I came up with it. Does that make sense, Adrian? Like how I developed that?
Yeah, parts of it. I still don't understand how we can, I mean, we had a hard increase on healthcare, right? Of 3.2 million if we take out, or 3.3 million, or whatever that number was, 3 point something million. That's a hard increase. There are somewhere around maybe 450 employees that aren't being affected either way. Are we supposed to go renegotiate all their contracts and make them pay $1.5 million more? I mean, I don't understand how that number goes to 1.874405, how it's possible to just arbitrarily take that number and make it much smaller.
No,
So on
no,
the second line,
yeah, we're not going to ask them to pay anything. I'm just saying that's the impact. If we give them a salary increase, it will result in a corresponding budget increase. In no way, in no way am I suggesting that they should have to pay more. That's why I'm trying to say, like, by her adding or refusing to remove the ARP ESSER, we are going to create a strain on our current workforce, which is not fair to them. And unfortunately, they'll have to live through it next year. I keep saying in these meetings, we need to rip off the Band-Aid, or we need to fix the wrongs or what they thought were the rights of the past. And I'm always like the type, and this is my opinion, is that we need to do it in 1 year so that nobody is like always being impacted, wondering if their job's in the line the following year. It's not fair. As you guys know, I'm not a proponent of that OPEB. I feel like we're kicking the soccer ball down, down, because when we have to repay that next year or start investing in the funding of it next year, you could see our budget is so tight. Where is she going to find that amount that we deferred? So it's going to come from those people that she just now are going to add to our budget, like, and that's why we need to cut it, right? Cut it, not remove our ESSER. And I know just for the fairness of our current workforce, it's not fair. That's where I was coming from. Sometimes, like when we're in those meetings, everything is just like move forward, move forward. So I'm thankful for you guys to allow me to speak and like show you where I'm coming from. It's never in intention of hurting our current workforce, because we need to take care of them. So thank you.
right, I still don't understand how that we lose 1.5 million with the forced healthcare increase on 90% of our
Oh,
employees.
yeah. So that's where the assumption part came in. So now that I'll just make that ARP ESSER 2.2. What's happening was, I was saying is that we would have increased the workforce by 43 people who never had benefits. And that would have been a corresponding million, whatever that number. So that was like the assumption that I made, that like all these people will now, get benefits, and our pool population actually increased. So let's say we had 200 teachers, now we're going to have 200, and not teachers, 200 staff. I'm throwing numbers out. And then by adding the ARP ESSER increase she had, now we're going to be at 250. So that's 50 additional people now receiving the benefits. But taking what you and Beverly said into account, that some of that 50 or 43 people never had benefits, I can make that adjustment to just reflect 2 million.
All right, I understand now. Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, so I believe the path forward, we're going to vote a number on Monday. We are going to then spend the time we have left to get whatever information the board as a whole believes they need to make any other decisions, but also to craft a justification to the town council and the RTM that shows why we need that level of funding to support the students. And I have to agree with Jen. I'm very concerned about the effect that these meetings are having on the district. We have a great number of professionals working every day. And when they start hearing scenarios being discussed, it must be very, very concerning. And I think we need to stabilize this situation. And keep in mind, if you were to walk through the schools, I don't think you're going to find a great number of people that are sitting around doing nothing. This staff is needed to support our students. And, you know, it's easy to say, let's cut administrators. Ask teachers if they would like to cut administrators. I mean, you've got behavioral problems and students that need support. And we need the proper amount of administrators to support the classroom teachers and all the other programs that we have throughout our schools. So I've committed to take whatever time it takes between now and budget time. The town manager has agreed to delay our date so that we can compile whatever additional information the board as a whole believes it needs to justify the increase to the town council and the RTM. And of course, they have a responsibility to balance that with their responsibility to the taxpayer and to also fund town operations. And so I have the utmost respect for those bodies. And I want to make sure that we don't say anything disparaging. Unfortunately, we've had a few situations like that, and I apologize for not calling it out at the moment. We should respect that they're also elected volunteers, and they take their responsibilities just as seriously as we do. So I don't know if there's anything new. I feel as though we've gone around the same circle many, many times now. If someone has something new that they'd like to propose, otherwise, I suggest that each of us reflect upon the information that we do have to determine what we believe is a number that will support the district and our students. And then on Monday, we will vote on that number. And then I commit to meet, and as a group, we will decide, what information we're going to direct the superintendent to compile that we're going to need to make a decision and to make a justification.
Well, I move to adjourn.
Second.
No, I didn't move. I said before I moved. to
Oh, I
adjourn.
thought you did. I heard the words.
No, yeah, I know. I just want to clarify something before we leave. And that is in 1966, when I came to teach in Groton, there was I don't know if it was a state or a federal law. I just know that I got the letter if you were not tenured, you got a letter every year in the spring that said your position would be terminated in the fall. And that was because if I guess maybe that was before the budget was passed. But at any rate, I got the letter. My husband got it. Every teacher, and it was for maybe 5 or 6 or maybe 7 years that continued to happen. So don't feel too bad, because nobody here on our staff is going to get that letter of termination that we all feared so desperately. I remember one teacher of a young man had to go home. He was so upset.
All right,
So
Ian,
move to adjourn.
Ian's got his hand raised.
Yeah, just to clarify, I mean, when I said administrative costs, that was sort of a broad thing. That wasn't necessarily targeting administrators in particular. It's just, again, looking at, all different departments.
Okay.
Well, this was teaching.
Yeah.
This was everybody. If you're an administrator, you had tenure.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I think we just crossed conversations there. I was
Oh,
referring to
oh,
something that Jay said earlier.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. Yeah. So we'll see what we can do on Monday.
Right.
Yeah.
I do want to thank all of you. I mean, you've brought a new energy to this budget process, each one of you. We've spent some long hours. You can argue how productive they've been, but you are putting in the work. And I look forward to continuing to put in the work, to do what is right.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate that.
And I think we owe that to you, Jay, so thank you.
Well, I wouldn't say that.
Wow.
All right.
I'm older than you are, so I say it.
Okay.
Good night, Gracie.
So,
Jay called the
Andre?
motion. Jay called the motion. You have your first, you have your second, but you didn't call the motion to
Well,
adjourn.
right, we had Andrea,
Andrea
Rob
and
seconded.
Robert, yes.
All right. So all in favor to adjourn, please say aye.
Hi, Mrs. Johnson, grammar without tears. I got that from two different sources.
Thank you, everybody. We're adjourned.
Yep.